Are you tired of spending your time and money chasing strategy after strategy only to discover what worked 10, 5, or even 2 years ago is not working now? Things shift fast in the online space, and if you're not keeping up, you're getting left behind. It's time for something different. Welcome to the Marketing, Media, and Money Podcast, where every single episode will be jam-packed with proven, profitable strategies, behind-the-scenes secrets, and what's working now resources from industry experts and global influencers to help you scale your business, shorten your learning curve, and stand out in a crowded, noisy marketplace. And now, your host, award-winning marketing and media strategist, and international speaker, Patty Farmer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Marketing, Media, and Money Podcast. I'm really looking forward to having another amazing entrepreneur on our show today, and I think you're really going to learn about a topic that you may not think about very often. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest. Heather Phillips is about far more than assisting businesses with every aspect involved in booking a trade show that makes sense for them. Heather's mission is to help bring a sense of relief from stress through education to business owners. Her approach takes business from scary to simple by breaking down the operation of any business and creating a list of easy steps to follow in order for her clients to reach their goals. This helps business owners create solutions they can easily use and implement to achieve their goals and growth. Heather has been providing such services on a company-by-company and client-by-client basis for over 20 years. That's a long time, Heather. Thanks so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really excited. So I think that people have been to trade shows. They may have been in a trade show. And a lot of our audience are speakers, entrepreneurs, and business owners. So I think it's something that they've seen, they're doing, want to do, or want to do better. So let's kind of talk a little bit about that, because I feel like it is something that we don't always think about. I'm a speaker. I'm in trade shows all the time, but one of the things that I think is really interesting is, for me, I have created a criteria that I take into consideration when I'm deciding whether or not a trade show is for me. So before we get started, let's kind of talk about some of the things that people should be thinking about if they're deciding whether or not a trade show is the right move for them, and if they feel like it can get them ROI for their industry.
And that's exactly it. When we're looking at a trade event, and we call them a trade event because it's anything from a small pop-up in a parking lot, those are still trade shows, to the big venues across the world. When you have a trade show floor where there's multiple vendors, a lot of different aspects that people don't always think about when they're deciding about a trade event. And they'll usually look at dollar for the booth price. And they'll look at that, and that'll be the main go-to that they look at to determine whether that's for them or not. But like you said, you need to have a criteria, because just the cost of that booth alone is not enough information for you to determine whether that trade event's going to be worth your marketing dollars. When you're looking at a trade show, there's so many other aspects. What comes with your booth buying power? You know, are you buying just an open space and you have to provide everything in that space? Are you buying it and they're going to provide drape, they're going to provide tables? You know what's coming with it. But not just that, how many badges are you getting? And it sounds really weird to say that, but people don't think about that, because you have to think about how many people are you going to be sending to a show, and are you traveling to that show, and what season is it in the location where the event is? Are you going to be paying higher premium prices because you're traveling during their spring break and they're going to be sold out? All of these factors have to be looked at when you're looking at the cost of a booth, because they all factor into what your total investment into that event is going to be. On top of that, you also have your shipping costs for your products or your marketing materials, your staff, their housing, their meals, or whatever you're providing for them, and airfare. And all of that combined has to be figured out to determine whether that trade event is worth it for you. And even if it's in your hometown, you still have to look at all of those numbers and figure out how many of these things apply and what is your total output, not just the cost of that booth. And a lot of people don't.
And what about insurance? I know that most times when I am going to a trade show, they require me to provide insurance as well.
Yes, so you have to have your insurance. Some companies will make you add them as additional insured. Some companies will ask you to either just provide proof of it. And if you don't have insurance to cover that sort of stuff, you have to buy their insurance, and it's at a higher premium than if you had your own insurance. There's also buying for electricity. If you need any sort of specialty hanging. I had somebody recently who wanted to hang a huge banner from their island booth, and the cost of the banner was $100, which is not a bad deal for a banner. It was 6 foot long by 4 foot wide, but the cost to have it hung above their booth was going to be almost $1,000. They opted not to have that sign hung. But all of these things, there's so many factors to it. Insurance is just one thing, and you should be carrying insurance for your business anyways, so it shouldn't be a problem when they ask for that insurance. But you'd be surprised at how many people don't have that insurance, so they don't get in the trade show.
That makes sense to me. So what are some of the questions? So it's important for them to come up with the criteria, but what are some of the questions that if somebody was thinking about whether or not that was a good, ROI for them, or whether it's just a good choice for them? It's always about the questions we ask. And I think that what happens is sometimes when it ends up not being good for us, it's because we just didn't ask the right questions up front. I've gotten really, really good about knowing what kind of questions that I want to ask. And really, what kind of demographics? I mean, it's really, I think, important to actually know, who's going to be there, what kind of marketing is involved. So what are some of the things they should ask?
Well, one thing they should ask is, how long is the trade floor actually open? And if it's something that is going to be fluctuating, how many actual face-to-face hours are there with the attendees? Some trade shows, their floor closes while there's seminars and symposiums and different things going on. So that affects how long you're actually face-to-face with people. The other questions is exactly demographics. Who's going to be there? If your demographics are very specific, you want to make sure that those are the people that are going to be there. If you're looking for more gender biased or industry biased, that's more for what you need, you want to make sure that those people are going to be there. You also want to find out, what are they doing outside of what's on the trade show floor? Because maybe there's another avenue for you to be involved in that gives you an opportunity to get face-to-face with people beyond just your booth time. And if you can do that, then that may be something that you're interested in having, and then you would put that into your value of that booth for you. You also want to know, where is it going to be held? What is the location? Because you're going to want to know, how easy is that venue to get into? You're going to want to know the real number of people, how many they're estimating to be there. Because sometimes if you look online, you'll see, oh, there's going to be 50,000 people. But when you read and you talk to the people that are actually hosting the event, you find that that is not the accurate number. You also want to know, what time of year is it happening at? What's going on in that area during that time? There's times where you don't want to be in certain areas because the likelihood of it getting shut down because of weather or having issues of people getting in. These are all considerations that you want to have prior to putting that money down. But also, how far out is that event? Because if you're looking at it and you can see that there's early bird pricing, you may be able to get some discounts. So what is the incentive to book it today versus waiting and gauging it against another show that may be happening around the same time and maybe a similar or other area, so that way you have a full scope and look at everything that's going on. And because maybe you can take a 2-day show and a 1-day show and combine them and make it where that event is now more lucrative for you because you're pairing it with something else in the similar vicinity, to where you can now take these events and make your money go further because you're already in the area.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Is there such a thing? So, I mean, obviously people who are doing it themselves would know, but hiring somebody like you to do it, are there certain things, like, I know as a speaker and as someone who hosts events myself, I know that when I'm looking at my contract with venues, there's a lot of things that in the beginning I didn't know, and I learned and usually in my pocketbook, right?
Right.
I learned what kind of things that I was supposed to ask, but nobody had told me. And so is there such a thing, if you're having somebody help you, but is there such a thing as, like, if they change the venue or if they change the date, like, are there clauses in there that can, help you to get out of it if something changes that doesn't work for you and it wasn't something that you decided to do? They change the venue, they change the date, there's different things that happen that can affect the outcome of a trade show.
Absolutely. My best advice is to read every contract, to look for those clauses, because every contract is going to be different, and not all of them will give you an out in the event that they have to change it for weather related issues, or the venue changes it, or whatever comes up and the show managers or the venue changes the event. So every contract should be read and reviewed and understood before you sign and put that money down, because most of these contracts, as soon as you apply, they want your payment, and you don't have as good of an out as you would if you had read the contract prior to signing it and putting your money down.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that really I remember learning was that I had attended this particular event multiple times. And I decided that I was going to have a booth. I was going to go ahead and go to their trade show. And while I knew that one of the things that they did at this event was the trade show was closed while the event was going on. It was really big. They had like 1,000 people, and it was in another room really close by. And so while the event was going on, you couldn't go into the trade show. Nobody could, which was kind of cool. That was totally okay. But they had lots of breaks and a lot of times when that was what they did, was drive everybody into the trade show. So I really liked it. But then all of a sudden, myself and several other speakers noticed a big drop in the amount of people that were coming into the trade show. We were spending a lot of time standing around that. We were really surprised because that hadn't happened before. And what we realized is the person who was hosting that event started doing this thing called coaching zones. And so during the breaks, what they were doing was they had their own coaching team out there giving away 15-minute coaching sessions that they were like salespeople that were selling them into their programs. Mm-hmm. And so what was happening is people were doing that instead of going into the trade show. And that was where a lot of less people happened because so many people were doing that. And so the reality was, in my opinion, I kind of thought that they should have lowered the price. It was quite expensive for that trade show because I just felt to myself, so you're selling us the space to be in this trade show that you're closing except for when you're on break. But then on break, you're driving everybody to go to these free coaching sessions that you're having your team give to sell into your programs. And I just kind of never really thought that was the right thing to do, in my opinion. I never went back to that event or did that trade show again because I just kind of didn't think that was actually as ethical as it could have been, per se. But I do see that it does sometimes happen, right? And so I think it's really important if you are going to go to a trade show and you're going to spend your money, you really need to know, like what you said, what is happening during that time. Are there specific times to do that? Like I know at my event, I actually set up the trade show portion. So literally people have to walk through that trade show in order to be able to get to where we're going to be. Like they have to back and forth. And then we very specifically have times for that, because if somebody's going to pay you to be in your trade show, I feel like they're my client. It's my responsibility to get as many people as I can in front of their booth.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I said when you're reading their prospectus or whatever is telling you about the agenda of what they're doing, when you're looking at those hours and you're mathing those hours out, you really want to balance that against what they're saying to the attendees, because what thing we do is we will review all of this stuff. So when we see the hours of the trade show floor and it looks like it's choppy, we're balancing that against what are the attendees being told that they're going to be doing. And if the trade show floor is closed, where let's say it's only open for breakfast for half an hour, and then they close and then they reopen for a 15 or 20 or 30-minute break, and then they close again until lunch, we inform all of our clients that that show may say that it's 5 days, but it's actually 5 days, but it's only 12 hours across those 5 days. And we show them how much time they're going to have in front of people face to face. And we show them the attendees information for when they're going to be in classes or whatever they're doing, that the trade show floor is closed. Because if that works with their idea of what they're looking for, and they want their people to go to those seminars and they want their trade show floor only to be worked when the floor is open, and they want their people in those training sessions, then that may be a really good fit for them. But if they're trying to have people there to be on a trade floor and be interacting with people for the full time that they're there, and it's being constantly closed, it may not be a good fit for their salespeople. So we always are telling people information so that they are fully aware. We don't want to have buyer's remorse, or we have an expectation of going to a trade show and then they get there and it's a letdown because that's not what they thought they were getting into. So we always go over all of the data and put it in very simple terms, like demographics, exactly what the demographics are. If we have numbers, if we have time, if we know that the trade show floor is only open Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at these specific times, it's all broken out. If it's from 10 to 5, it's broken out. We total up the hours for them so that they can see it's 5 days and 12 hours, or maybe it's 3 days and 27 hours. So we always have it broken out so that it's very clear, because that is one of the biggest things people don't look at and scrutinize because they take it at face value. And that there is where a lot of the loss of money seems to come from on their ROI, is because they don't factor in for that. And then they don't factor in for the demographics not being a full fit for what they're looking for.
So if somebody was going to be looking, it's the end of the year, right? And if somebody was going to say, oh, you know what, I think I want to utilize trade shows as part of my marketing strategy, and they had a budget and they were to call you up and meet with you, whether it's virtually or in person, if they were going to do that and they were going to say, okay, I have X amount of dollars, here's my demographic, here's the goals that I want, whatever. I'm actually going to ask you what questions you would ask them. But if they had a certain amount of money, are you able to actually sit down with them, look at their goals, ask them some questions, and determine which shows are the right fit for them? So like you already have relationships with companies you already know because you vetted them before, so that rather than somebody just like going in Google and saying, oh, what are some good shows that they really don't know, is one of the things you provide for them help when they're taking their dollars and showing them where the best places are for them to spend their dollars.
So what we do is we provide all of the data that they need to make an informed decision. At the end of the day, it's their marketing money, and we're here to help them find and vet and determine whether the information that they're looking at is correct or not. So we actually do not build relationships with any of the trade events. And the reason for that is because we work as an extension of the company that we are working on behalf of. So when we sit down with them, we talk about all of the questions that are going to be pertinent to helping them make the perfect fit to their trade shows. And then we go and we look in the areas of which they're looking for trade shows, and generally what types. If they're a little more open to types, then it's more about the general area and dates. And from there, we put all the information out there that they need, and then they pick and choose which ones they want us to contact on their behalf to verify, number one, that they can get in the show. Number two, that this trade show still has openings, updated floor plans, whatever is needed for them to make that final decision. Any additional questions that they had that was not answered with the prospectus or with the exhibitor forms or anything that's out there. And then we make those calls on their behalf, and then we present it back to our clients, and then we finish it up by taking care of all of their applications and working on their behalf to close that deal for them. So everything we do is customized to the client because every trade show is different. So if they think that we're a skincare company, but I call them tomorrow and we're a shoebox company, then that trade show is very confused because they don't know why. So we always do everything under our client's name as an extension of them. So we're building their brand name, building the relationship with that trade show, building them up for being an attendee of the exhibitor for that trade show, so that way when they go to that show, if they want to be rebooked the following year, then that relationship's been built. And the foundation is there for our client to have that relationship with the trade show for the following year. And if they don't want to go back, that's okay too, because then they can say, oh, our trade show department will be in touch, and then they can let us know. Just tell them no thank you.
I actually really like what you just said about how you are representing them and that's the relationship that you are building. I think that really is a lot different than what some people are saying. So Heather, how do you feel about it on the flip side of that? So what are some of the things you do on the flip side? So if there's a lot of speakers that are listening to the show and a lot of people who produce events. That is a huge part of my demographic, since that is what I do as well. And what if somebody was having a show and they were looking for people to book the trade show, right? To come and have a booth at the trade show. Do you also work on the other side too, or do you only work on the side where people want to book?
We actually work on both sides. So we actually have been contacted by people that are having events then they want help finding people that fit the demographics of what they want for exhibitors. And so we work with them to find, locate, and send out the request for people to become exhibitors. And either we can work on their behalf and be that end gap that, yep, you've been approved, or no, we're going to take your information, we're going to hand it off to the show producer, and they will be in contact with you. So we work on both sides.
So what is the difference to you between an exhibitor and a sponsor booth?
So an exhibitor is somebody who's showing up, they're going to be there and they're a part of it, and they're there for their own company and their own reasons. A sponsor is somebody who's working as a co-brander with the show manager to produce that show. They're going to be an exhibitor, but they have a little bit more invested into the show because they are, in essence, also sponsoring it. So they're going to want to be out there on all of the social media. They're going to want to be promoting it just as much as the show manager will, because they are a little more heavily invested into it. We work with sponsors, we work with exhibitors, we work with people who like speakers who don't necessarily want to be an exhibitor on a show floor, but they want to be involved in other ways. So we also work with like artists and authors and musicians to get people that are interested in doing something unique in their sponsorship booth or in their exhibitor booth, and they're looking for ways to differentiate themselves from their competition. So we get a lot of people that contact us and say, hey, can we be a part of your list? So when people are looking for these things, they can contact us, and that they know that we are out here looking for these opportunities.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense. So can you tell us what are some of the mistakes you see people make when they do a trade show, when they have a booth, that you see people like repeatedly making the same, people do, you see it all the time that people are making? Because I know when I go to trade shows, sometimes I see things and I kind of see them all the time. And I think that they're not that great. And so I just kind of wondered, what are some of the things? So it's always important to know what not to do as it is to know what to do. So what are some of the things that you would say are a few mistakes that they can learn from so they don't do it?
Know if you have any competitors, even if they're a one-off competitor on the floor, and if they are, try not to be in the booth right next to them. That's a big one. I've seen it happen. People don't pay attention to the floor, and they just see an open floor and they get super excited and pick a booth, and they don't look at who's around them. And so that can sometimes be very detrimental, depending on what your products are and what type of show it is and how big the show is. And then the other thing is not knowing booth and exhibitor etiquette and doing things that are going to call attention to you in a bad way, and your booth in a bad way that can have your company be escorted out or asked to leave the trade show floor. So reading through the rules and protocols is a really important thing to make sure that your staff is professional, that they understand your booth space, what's allowed and what's not allowed, and that they understand to stay within their booth, to bring people to them instead of stepping out into the aisles, because you want to stay within compliance and you want the show managers and the venue to really like your company and want to invite you back. You want to be that really good guest that the hosts really like you and would like you to return year after year, so you can build those long-term relationships. But those are two of the biggest things that I see, is not knowing the show floor and understanding where your booth is at and who's around you, and not having staff prepared for being in a booth and leaving the booth unattended, stepping out of the booth, being loud, not using good professional behavior in the booth. So those are
being
the
on the
two
phone all the
biggest
time.
things.
I see that one all the time. People are walking by and I'll see people, I'm like, why do they even pay money to have that booth when they're spending all their time on their phone doing texts and stuff? It just seems to me like, are you there because you want to talk to someone? Although I do really, sometimes they just want their brand to be seen. But I actually think it looks bad when you go to a booth and like somebody standing in front of them, you have to wait for them to look up from their phone to talk to. Every time I see it, it's like, really? So I think
Absolutely.
that was kind of interesting to me. So what are some of the things that you would say would help someone when they're thinking about putting their booth together? So I know a lot of times we have speakers and entrepreneurs and as business owners. I mean, I know that there's a lot of big companies and they spend a lot of money and they have a lot of really great things when they're setting up their booth for some of those really big trade shows. But when we're talking to speakers, entrepreneurs, and small business owners, what are some of the things that they can do to get the most bang for their buck and really make their booth stand out in a big way?
Think of it like throwing a party. You always want to have a theme, and you want that theme to be in line with your mission statement, with what you're trying to do at that booth. If you're at that booth just to put your brand recognition out there, then you want your booth to invite people in to come in and have something there to inspire people to say, hey, who are you and what are you guys promoting? Because you have a theme that makes people be curious. If you are out there and you're looking to sell, make your booth inviting for people to step in and see your wares and to buy from you. The hardest thing for most people, if you're on a floor and you have a booth that's very compact and you're afraid to step in there and look at anything because you're afraid to knock anything over, your booth's not inviting, people are not going to come in there. Colorful, engaging, something that's going to be eye-catching or a reason for people to stop and talk to you, and have sales staff in that booth that are not afraid to say hi to people. Because that, like you said, on the phone all the time, not looking up, you're wasting your money at that point. Because even if you have a beautiful booth, if you don't have people that are going to be engaging, people are going to walk right by your booth because they're going to feel unwelcomed. So when you're looking at a space, figure out what you need and how big your space is going to be, and find a way to turn it into something that's going to be open, inviting, and showcase your products. Even if you're service-based, you still want to come up with something. Recently, I had a company that had a block party in their booth, which was a play on their name. And they created an atmosphere where people wanted to walk in and talk to them and see what they were about because they had a party atmosphere and they were using the hashtag block party. So they had a reason. And if you have that, then people are going to be there. And if you make it where people want to be there and talk to you because you're making that inviting, it's simple. Just make it where people can feel comfortable walking up to or walking into that space and talking to you.
Where do you stand on the candy versus no candy on a booth table?
I don't see a problem with it. There's always something, whether it's pens or whether it's stress balls, everybody has something out there. What's wrong with there being something there? Even if they get to grab a piece of candy and you say hello and they walk away, it's a piece of candy, but you know what? They may remember that you said hello and that you gave them a piece of candy, and then they may come back later. You never know what's going to be a trigger for somebody to be a client or to even refer your company name. If it's a piece of candy, why not? It was good, 2 cents spent.
What I really like when I see booths at a trade show is I like ones that have height. Like when everything's not just flat, you only have X amount of space on a table, however booth size you have. And there's always a lot of different things that you can do and bring in. But I've been seeing a lot of it where people are having these like shelves that you can put under. And, so it's kind of having a little bit of tiered and a variety. I think that looks really good. And when I look at it, it doesn't seem like it's very expensive. So it seems like a very affordable way to look nice. I know for myself, when I go to a trade show, I always order flowers. I always order flowers in my brand colors. And I always put them on the table because I just think it always looks nice. Now, they don't always let you. There are some trade shows that won't let you do that. But if they do, I always really like to do that. It just kind of looks nice. But I think there's a lot of different things that you can do. And I think that people should just be looking at what are some different ways that I can make my booth look different. The last trade show I went to, this girl had she was in a really good spot and she had 3 different banners and they were all different sizes. And it looked really good. Like the way she had it set up, it looked really good. But I have to tell you, hands down, the best one I ever saw, and she's a friend of mine and a speaker, and I thought it was so brilliant. And she picked her spot was really good. And she got 2 booths, and she went in with somebody who also had the same target audience as her, just did something different so they could be there together. And what they did, and what she says she does every time now, is when she goes into a town, she contacts a furniture rental company. And she says for about $250, they bring out furniture and a beautiful rug and a couch and stuff. And so she has all this beautiful furniture. And then all she packs is her branded throw to go over the couch and the stuff that just kind of makes it look really homey. And she says people love to come in and sit down and talk to them. And she says she's booked a lot of business doing that.
Absolutely. When you have a booth, you always want to think as if it was a room in your house. How do you decorate it to bring in people based upon what your mission is and what your product or service is? It's really easy to rent stuff from in town and having people rent stuff. We just rented some pub tables for an event. for a client, and it was very affordable to rent those outside and bring them in and just deliver them. We ordered palm trees for this event for another booth. So thinking outside the box. And if you are not somebody who has that vision, find somebody who can help you come up with that vision for your booth, because you want to make it where you are able to ship what you need to ship and keep your shipping costs lower if you can. And if you can rent stuff when you're in another town, great. But if you need stuff specifically made for your booth, then contract with somebody who can help make it easily shippable for you, so that way it's just, you ship your box, you open it, you take everything out, you put it in your space, and when you're done, you put it back in the box and reship it. But with decorating your booth, it's like decorating a room in your house. You want it to have a feel, you want it to have a theme, and you want to make it where it's affordable to do this multiple times in a year if that's your plan. If you're only looking at doing one trade show a year, then you definitely want to make that booth cost effective, because you don't want to be putting a whole bunch of money into a booth that you're not going to be using again. So you want to find a way to mitigate the costs, but still have that booth be a wow factor. And banners are a great way to do it. We had somebody putting a banner in the colors of their scheme that matched their tablecloth, and they put it on the front of a rented cart for an espresso machine. And they had somebody bring in an espresso machine, and they were serving espressos to help draw people up and to talk to them. And they gave them a spot to sit and put their feet up and have an espresso while they were talking with the people that were working the booth. And they had TVs going, and one was static with just a loop, and the other one was a presentation that was running so people could hear and see it. And then they also had, for a couple of hours, they had a bartender come in, and they were showcasing one of their new lines that were coming out. So it's using ideas and thinking outside the box to help draw in, but still get your message across and still be within your branding and having your brand out there.
Is one of the services that you provide is if somebody doesn't really have, not everybody's creative, right? Mm-hmm. If somebody comes to you and says, oh, this is what I want to do, and this is my marketing budget, can you help them to come up with ideas for how they should decorate their booth and what type of things they could do, and help them with a plan for that?
Absolutely. We just did that. We had somebody that had this idea, and they didn't even know what kind. They had co-branded with somebody else. And that's the other thing. If you're co-branding with somebody else in a booth, my appeal to you is to make sure that the show is allowing co-sharing of a booth of two different brands, because not all trade shows will allow that. Number one. Number two, make sure somebody in your organization is listed on the paperwork along with the other company, to make sure that everybody is on the same page in case that something happens and one party does not convey information to the other party, that you have somebody in your wheelhouse that knows what's going on and is able to be a part of the decision-making process with that booth. And third, that everybody's on point for what that booth needs to look like. We had somebody recently who had a co-branded situation, and company A decided they didn't want to be involved. Company B said, oh, well, we're still going to go ahead and do it. We'll go ahead and put you guys on all the marketing. And last minute, company A diverted all of the funds for that booth to a event within that, and the booth was taken away. And that was last minute. So they had to come up with something, but we had worked on that booth and the setup of that booth and the layout and what that booth looked like, because they were like, well, we know we want to have A and B, but we don't know anything beyond that. So we took the idea that they had and we helped them come up with a way to make that booth work for what they were trying to do, and found a cost-effective way to make that happen, since they were coming from out of the country, to be able to make that booth work. And when all of that went by way of crazy and was gone, we came up with a backup solution that gave them still access to everything. And we worked with them hand in hand with the show manager to come up with an option C at that point. So we pulled it off on option D, but you always want to have that information in there. But we are here to help and assist in whatever way the company needs. If that's what they need, is some help with creativity, they need help with the setup, logistics, they don't really know how to lay out, they don't understand what the booth information means, what is an island versus a corner versus, anything else, we will get that information and we will convey it, and we'll even do schematics if we have to.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Heather. How can people get a hold of you? How can they connect with you?
So they can get a hold of me either through our website, which is just booktradeshows.com. My email address is heather@booktradeshows.com, or they can give us a call here in Vegas at 702-684-7079.
And are all your social media on your website?
Yes, they are. We are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, we are on Twitter and LinkedIn, and we're out there.
That is perfect. So thank you so much for being on the show, Heather. And we're at the portion of the show now, which we like to call OpenMic. And for me, this is sort of my version of social karaoke, where I'm going to pass the mic over to you. We're going to ask you to share your best marketing, media, or money strategy, tip, or resource with the audience. So this is the Marketing, Media, and Money Show. So what is your best marketing, media, money strategy?
So it's going to be start with your why and make sure it equals the ROI that you're legitimately looking for. If your why is just to build a brand name and you're not worried about making money at a trade show, then build your ROI at that show to reflect that. If you are putting in a whole bunch of money into this event and you really need to make a certain dollar amount, then make sure your why shows that. You work your program for it and your ROI on the other side is prepared for that. Because if you do that, then a trade show will not be scary. You will have less stress and a better overall experience and will have a better outcome because you started with your why and you made it equal your ROI.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Heather, for coming here today and, really sharing your brilliance so generously. I love that.
Patty, thank you so much for having me. You are amazing, and I am so grateful to know you, but also to be here with you and your listeners. So thank you.
You're so welcome. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this episode of the Marketing, Media, and Money podcast. I really would love to invite you to share, subscribe, and leave a review on your favorite listening platform. Make sure you connect with us on our social media platforms as well. And if you'd like to get up close and personal with our guests, and the guests to our sister magazine, Marketing, Media, and Money as well, please join our Facebook group, Marketing, Media, and Money Magazine Podcast and Live Event. So until our next episode of the Marketing, Media, and Money Podcast, have a great evening. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye now.
Thank you for joining us today on the Marketing, Media, and Money Podcast. To shorten your learning curve even more, make sure to grab your free copy of the Marketing, Media, and Money magazine at www.marketingmediamoney.com. I promise your business will thank you.